Good evening. I'm Susan Mariyama, Chair of Livable Raleigh. Welcome to Livable Raleigh's emergency public meeting to discuss the options for the next city election. Livable Raleigh's goal tonight is to provide an excellent model for community engagement that allows your voices to be heard. There are a few housekeeping details about this Zoom meeting that I'd like to mention before we begin. Number one, all attendee microphones have been muted. These will remain muted until you are called on to speak in the public comment portion of the meeting. Number two, this meeting is being recorded. Number three, anyone attending this emergency public meeting will be allowed to comment or ask a question if you so desire. After our brief presentation, you will learn more about how you will be able to make your comments and ask questions. Just hang tight, okay? You may be aware that Raleigh's City Council has asked the state to move our city election date from October 2021 to November 2022, adding more than a year to all the terms. In addition, the City Council has changed the election process, eliminating the runoffs in favor of a plurality vote. The mayor and City Council made this decision in secret. There was no public notice, no public input, and no public comment. Next slide, please. Now I would like to introduce Tim Niles from Livable Raleigh, who will help you understand more about the city election, how the decision the mayor and the city council made has really changed the status of our election, and what we, the people, will be able to do about it. Okay, Tim, take it away.
Thank you, Susan. I'm Tim Niles, and I want to thank you for joining us this evening. Way back in May, Livable Raleigh reported on City Council's power grab to add over a year to their time in office, and we asked you to stay tuned as we explored our options. We've done our homework, and we're ready to do what the City Council has refused to do since April, hold a public meeting on this important issue. We're going to share the information we've gathered, and then we will be asking your opinion about whether we should do a petition drive to hold a special election for mayor and council under the city's recall rules. I'll explain the details of those rules shortly. First, let me start by explaining how we got to this point. Next slide, please. The City Council is made up of a mayor, 2 at-large councilors, and 5 district councilors. The current City Council was elected in October 2019 for a 2-year term. The next election should be this October, 4 months from now. Next slide, please. But 2020 was a census year. Because of the census, Raleigh has to redraw its district lines to balance them by population. The census data has been delayed and won't arrive until September. There won't be enough time to redraw those districts for the October election, and holding that election with the old districts would be illegal. So the election must be moved. Next slide, please. There are 2 opportunities for an election in 2022, either during the state primaries in March or the general election in November. The earliest opportunity for the citizens to choose their representatives for City Council would be March of 2022. Next slide, please. Instead, City Council asked the state to move the election to November 2022, thereby extending their terms in office by over a year. At the same time, they asked the state to make even more changes that weren't required to deal with the census delay. They asked to make the move to even years permanent and to change to a plurality election, which eliminates the opportunity for runoffs. This means the winner does not have to receive 50% of the votes. And remember, they did this without ever asking the people of Raleigh what they want. The NNO had this to say about the process: going behind closed doors, debating among themselves for an hour, and voting in private to postpone an election is not the kind of process citizens should expect from the city council of the state capitol. Public mistrust of politicians is such that even the appearance of self-dealing and impropriety must be avoided. And the last thing we need is for the city council members to emerge from a figurative smoke-filled room with a decision bearing no public input. The entire Wake County Senate delegation voted against this request from the city because of the complete lack of transparency. Next slide, please. While I step away to shut up my landline. I'm going to go off script for one moment. Just this afternoon, the NNO published a piece about tonight's meeting. In that piece, one more time, the city gave two excuses for not being able to hold the election in March. Neither of these excuses hold water, and the media need to challenge them on these. First, they say there is not enough time to redraw the districts for March, but had the census data arrived on time in April, they would have drawn the districts and held the election in October, 6 months later. They have the same 6-month period if the data comes in September for a March election. Second, they say they need more time to prepare for the Parks bond. They were supposed to be prepared for the Parks bond for the October 2021 election, and Parks bonds don't have anything to do with the census data. A Parks bond is also not required to coincide with a municipal election. You'll remember the city had an affordable housing bond on the ballot in the presidential election last November when there was no municipal election. What have they been doing the last year and a half? Don't fall for their excuses. Now, back on script. We know that you are probably as frustrated as we are and want to know what your options are. We are trying to hold the election we were entitled to have this October as soon as possible. The solution that is available to us is to call a special election under Raleigh's recall rules. The state does not have laws regulating these special elections. The city of Raleigh has its own rules. This special election would not automatically remove anyone from office. It simply sets a new election to fill the remainder of the current terms of office. The council members can run to retain their seats, but they're not required to. Because this special election simply completes the current terms, the census data is not needed and districts don't have to be redrawn. Since the city has asked the state to move the election, the current term of office would be extended to November 2022. So the winners of this special election would serve until November 2022, when a new regular election will be held. Of course, the governor has not signed the bill to move the election to November yet. And if he doesn't, and the election is scheduled for March, there will be no need for a special election. Next slide, please. How do we proceed? We petition the city to call for this special election. Next slide, please. A valid petition contains signatures from Raleigh residents who are registered voters. The number of signatures required is 25% of the number of voters from the 2019 election, although people who signed do not have to have voted in 2019. We use the vote totals from 2019 simply to calculate the number of signatures required. We can recall every current member of City Council. The number of signatures required for each is based on the number of voters in each of their individual races from 2019. We need about 14,000 signatures to recall the mayor or either of the at-large councilors. The district councilors will require between 2,000 and 3,300 signatures each. Next slide, please. Our plan is to recall the entire council. The at-large councilors would run in individual races, not a top two race as they do in a regular election. Each registered voter may sign a petition against the mayor, a petition against each at-large councilor, and a petition against their individual district councilor. Next slide, please. Once the petitions are completed, we file them with the city clerk. The clerk has 10 days to validate the signatures. If found insufficient, we have 10 days to make the necessary corrections. Next slide, please. Once the petitions are validated, the city clerk submits them to the Wake County Board of Elections. The Board of Elections must schedule the election to occur within 60 days of receiving the validated petitions. Next slide, please. The election will have early voting, mail-in voting, and military voting. If no candidate receives over 50% of the vote, a runoff will be scheduled within 20 days with the top 2 finishers. Next slide, please. We would like to hear your thoughts. Do you believe we should move forward with these petitions? Are you willing to help us do the work necessary to succeed? We will email 2 action items to each of you. One, to send a message to the governor to veto the bill to move the election to November. A second, to sign up to volunteer in the recall effort, should it be necessary. And you can always go to our website and make a donation to help us continue our efforts to keep you informed. Now I'm going to turn the meeting over to Lynn Edmonds and Wanda Hunter to call on you so we can hear what you have to say. Thank you for listening. Next slide.
Good evening. Thank you, Tim, and to everyone joining us tonight. My name is Lynn Edmonds, and I serve on Livable Raleigh's Advisory Committee. As Tim said, it is our intention to give you the opportunity that this council did not, and that is to provide you an opportunity to provide input on when the next election should be. We understand that it cannot happen this October. But as Tim laid out very clearly, it can absolutely happen before November of 2022. So we would like you to comment on that. When should this next election happen? You each will be given 2 minutes to speak or ask a question. The purpose of the time limit is to hear from as many of you as possible that wish to make remarks. I will be the timekeeper, and if you go over 2 minutes, I will ask you to please wrap up. We'll be using a feature called Stack, and all you have to do to be called on is type the word Stack, S-T-A-C-K, in the chat. Wanda Hunter is monitoring those of you that write Stack in the comments, and she will call on you. We also have Wanda Gilbert Coker monitoring this event on Facebook Live. And real quickly, we had a little bit of struggle. Are we on Facebook Live? Can someone tell me?
We are not on Facebook Live. We have run into technical difficulties, but the video here will be posted online, afterwards.
Okay, no problem. So if you have joined us by phone, you will also be given a chance to speak or ask your question. Tim Niles is going to be monitoring the chat for questions. He is going to respond to those as best he can, but we do encourage you to express your thoughts and ask your questions on audio using the Stack feature so that everyone can hear you, so that we can all participate in this conversation. Please try to stay on topic, and the topic is, that is the timing of this next city council election. We do plan to hold more public meetings like this, including in-person meetings very soon. So you will have other opportunities to express concerns that you might have. But tonight, we're really trying to get your input on calling for a special election prior to November 2022. Finally, we are going to pause in about 20 minutes from now to do some polling. These polls are going to be brief. They will not take up a lot of time. And as soon as we wrap those up, we will resume the public comment. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Wanda Hunter. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynn. And so I'd just like to thank everybody once again for taking time out of your evening this evening to be with us. And we're going to go ahead and get started. And the first person that I have on Stack is Veronica Thring. Veronica, if you unmute yourself.
I'm here. Yeah. Hi. So I just wanted to ask, I see I think it was the 15th, the work session on the 15th, a group proposed that, is obviously organized by council. They proposed that they increase their terms from 2 years to 4 years. So how is that going to influence what's happening? Are they going to be able to, get that through? And is this going to be a part of the platform for the petitions?
Do you want me to answer that question?
Sure, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, there is a group called the Study Group on Election Terms, Salaries, and Increasing Voter Turnout. They meet on a weekly basis right now. They just did an interim report to the council of what they have decided on at this point. And that is, they will recommend that the city go to 4-year terms, staggered, so that the district councilors run in one cycle on a 2-year on one cycle, and the at-large councilors and mayor run on the other cycle. So there will be an election every 2 years. The city council has not taken that up yet, has not done anything about that yet. This has nothing, has anything to do with the law that the legislature is passing to move the election. So there's no action has been taken on that yet.
Thank you so much, Tim. And next, we will move on to Josh Bradley.
Hey everybody, Josh Bradley here. Couple things real quick, under 2 minutes. If the governor vetoes this, do we have a feeling of where he's sitting on this? And if he vetoes it, does it veto the plurality election as well? And second, it would be to recall the mayor and the entire council, right? Like we're going to pull everybody out, and then
it takes individual petitions to we can recall all 8 of them, but it means 8 individual petitions. If the governor vetoes the bill to move it, that just means it goes back to the legislature and they either try to override his veto or do something different. Who knows? I mean, the governor can sit on it and do nothing for 10 days and it automatically becomes law. And if he vetoes it, then the portions of it that apply for March for everybody else that isn't Raleigh would also get vetoed, and they'd have to go back and get something done for the rest of the municipalities in the state. So he has made no comment as to what his current thinking on the bill is. We all wait with bated breath.
Okay, over.
Thank you, Tim.
Wait, hang on one second. I'm sorry. Josh, didn't you have a couple of did you get all your questions answered?
Well, one was just a comment that's saying that if we don't recall, and if the governor doesn't veto and they move the election, is there any work to trying to get them to sign a pact that they will do nothing once they exceed their mandate? That's not an emergency. I mean, because there should be a lot of pressure that once they exceed their voted mandate, then technically they don't represent the citizens of Raleigh. So, I mean, do you think they would be willing to sign a petition saying something like, we understand that we're not really have a mandate to run the city, so we're not going to do any rezonings or anything that's not an emergency that happens if we have a mandate again? Over.
Yeah, I kind of doubt that's going to happen. But that's just me. I'm a cynic.
Yeah. I don't think that's likely either, Josh. You know who we're dealing with. So thank you for your questions. And Tim, thank you for a succinct answer. Our next person is Gary Saber. Gary, you're on mute.
Okay, hi, I'm unmuted now. There was, in case everybody doesn't know about this, there was a recall petition for Mayor Baldwin that was started by Stephanie Mendel, and some other people were involved in it, like David Cox. The 2 people on council, David Cox and Patrick Buffkin, are sort of the two that are against the rest of the council on all of this stuff. I have a friend of mine that works for Roy Cooper, and I can probably find out some information about where he is on making the call for that, decision. Other than that, we need to find out from Stephanie Mendel where that original recall petition was for Mayor Baldwin. And that all started when this council just indiscriminately eliminated the CACs and upset a whole bunch of people. I don't know what happened with that. I don't think Stephanie's on this Zoom meeting. She probably should be, but she's not.
I am on the Zoom meeting, sorry. And I did not start that petition.
Okay.
I was trying to help with it, but I didn't start it. But the people who did start it started it right around the time COVID really, everything shut down. And I think that was the issue. Also, just to clarify, it's David Knight and David Cox who voted against the extension, not Patrick Buffkin.
Oh, okay. So Patrick did not vote against, he voted for the extension?
Yes, he did. Mhm.
Okay, I didn't know that because he indicated to me that he didn't. So that's very useful information. So that's it for me.
The original vote on that, David Knight was the one who voted originally against it. When they announced it in the public meeting, what the result was of that, at that time, David Cox also changed his vote from being in favor of it to being against it. His reasoning for changing the vote was because they were originally given two choices, March or November. And what they were worried about was if the state moves the primary from March to May, because the local ordinance was changed to specify March, they'd be stuck with March and paying for it themselves. When David found out that there was always an option to ask the legislature to change the ordinance to attach it to the primary date, no matter where it was, instead of specifying March, then you could have had the election in the spring and not worry about it. So he changed his opinion.
Okay, well, thanks for clarifying that. I'm glad that somebody's up on all that stuff, but you know, I've been dealing with Patrick Buffkin on some other issues, and I do have his cell number, and I do talk to him quite a bit now, and I'm going to bring that up with him. So thanks. That's it for me.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for your time. Wanda Gilbert Coker, did you want to add any context about the previous recall petition? That
Yes,
wasn't
I
part of her
just
question.
would like to clarify that my daughter and I, Sade Gilbert and myself, started the MAB Got to Go along with some other people, Wanda Hunter and others in the community. We first initiated because we saw very early on where she was going. So yes, that's who started MAB Got to Go, in the Facebook page, and everything is still there. And so we stand in solidarity with Livable Raleigh to continue this.
Thank you, Wanda. Our next person is Jim Brennan.
There I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. Just a suggestion. I've already emailed the governor my displeasure, but I also emailed my state representative who voted for it. My suggestion, if you don't live in the city, I'm in the extra jurisdictional limit, is I voiced pretty strongly my displeasure, and I had given him a campaign contribution. And my suggestion is, along with the governor, contact your state legislator, let them know you're displeased. That, I think, will help a little bit. I don't know who's talking to the governor, but if all of a sudden the state legislature understands that, unlike his Senate counterpart, he went ahead and did it. In this particular case, I just wanted him to know how displeased I was. Just a suggestion.
Thank you, Jim. I think that's an excellent suggestion as a call to action to everybody who's here to reach out to your state representatives in the House in case the governor does veto it and it goes back and it has to have a vote again. Wanda Gilbert Coker, I wanted to come to you to see if you had anybody who had called in that wanted to speak.
As of now, we do not have anyone who has called in and said they would like to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. And moving right along, we have next Dave Groening.
That's you got that right, actually. Thank you. Yeah, so yeah, I fully support the idea of having a recall election, and it's, you know, it's just amazing. This is just like the latest and most egregious example of this council's complete disregard for having any kind of public input and involving the people who are supposed to be in charge in the processes that they do. It's just amazing. And I think somebody else pointed out on chat, I'm in District D, and we don't even have a counselor that we've elected. You know, not that I have any strong opinion against Stormy Forte, but you know, we should have an elected counselor representing us, not one that was appointed. And that's all I have to say, I think.
Thank you, Dave. We really appreciate that and your input. Our next speaker is Alan Falk.
Thank you. I'm new to the topic altogether, but so I'll have a slightly different perspective. I don't mind the March, moving the election to March. I think it's probably a good idea rather than pushing out the term limits and whatever. But what really bugs me about the situation is the closed doorness of it. And I think there should be a strong push to opening the doors and shining a bright light on this and asking all of the council, why did you do this publicly, to explain why it happened? And I think that may, change opinions or whatever. But that's the thing that really bugs me. I don't know why they did this, and it doesn't sound like there's any source to find out. Yep, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. That's a good point and a point well taken. And I think a lot of citizens are asking the same question. Why is everything in secrecy? Thank you. And our next speaker is Leon Cook.
Good evening. I have a question. Tim was talking about the committee that was taking up salaries, et cetera. Are they also taking up the expansion of districts? Instead of 5, making it more than 5 because of the increased population? And 2, getting rid of at large?
They are going to take up the issue of the number of districts. They have not started that conversation yet. I believe they had one initial conversation. Their initial thought was that if they did anything, they would just add one more at-large candidate. My personal comment here, and that is me personally, not a livable Raleigh position. I believe that there should be 10 district councilors and a mayor and 0 at-large candidates. The makeup of the council right now with 2 at-large candidates, half of the council lives in District C.
Mm-hmm.
And if you add another at-large councilor, you will get another majority voted white councilor from District C, probably, or inside the Beltline. The amount of representation on council who all live inside the Beltline is kind of ridiculous when half of the population of Raleigh lives outside the Beltline. That's my personal opinion. It's not a livable Raleigh position.
I agree, and thank you. I already notified the governor that I'm against him signing that bill, and I will volunteer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leon. And thank you, Tim, for your answer.
Hey, Wanda, just real quick, can we take 3 more and then we'll do the polling? Let's do 3 more speakers and then we'll switch to the poll. Is that okay?
Yeah, right now we only have one more on, and if you want to do it right after him, then we could go on. All right.
This is Roger Kosak. I'd like to get a queue, and if you just use 3, I don't have the way to give you the stack thing, so I don't.
Okay, so let me get the next person in line and I'll put you right behind him, Roger. Is that okay?
Thank you.
All right. On stack right now, I have Will Marks.
Oh, hi, thanks so much. I have a couple of questions. Let's see, 3 or 4. I'm curious about, let me preface it by saying the idea of a recall on one level is very appealing to me. I'm curious about, I'm completely ignorant about the process. I've never lived in a district or a state where I've had the ability to participate in a recall. So I don't know about what the possible downsides are, but I'm curious about what would be the cost to our municipality to do a recall, like if we actually succeeded. I'm curious about the opportunity cost for us. It sounds like a lot of work, and I'm wondering if there's a possibility that it could distract us from other things, such as working on restructuring the council. Another one is could it have a possible negative impact on what our candidate selection is, either during a recall or in a future election? I mean, I'm not sure how that would work, but I'm just wondering if there's candidates lined up who want to jump in who are quality candidates, and if they've got some way to get their message out. And then just to circle back, is there something else that we could consider that might have as much or more impact as an effort like this. I'm agnostic at this point. I haven't heard enough information to support a recall effort or not, but emotionally it appeals to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. I think this is kind of a new experience, and we're treading new waters also. So Tim, did you have more to add?
I can tell you, I don't know of any downsides myself. The downside is if we don't do this, it's our only option. It means leaving this particular council who likes to do things behind closed doors and with no input in place for 8 months longer than they need to be in place if they had scheduled it for March. I can also tell you the way the law is written, it's a very old law for recalls. It's never been done, but to my mind, an unprecedented action by this council requires an unprecedented response by the citizens. And I do believe the law states that the election would be paid for by the city of Raleigh.
Thank you, Tim. And next we have Roger.
Hi, this is Roger Kosak. I'm up here in the farthest reaches of Raleigh. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to get on this call, because as the previous gentleman, one of the previous gentlemen pointed out, there's a complete distortion of who's got the most people and who has equal representation in terms of these districts. I think that's the fundamental flaw and always has been in this whole election business, particularly the fact that we've got two people that are at-large candidates, and the center of the population is the one that elects those. So that's whole thing's been distorted from day one. I've been here for 30 years, and every election the same thing happens. So I think we really need to shake the tree and get this thing squared away. And for those of you that aren't familiar with it, doing a recall, particularly one for 25%, that is a big deal in something like this. I mean, look, in the indicative of that is the limited number of people that vote in these elections, and limited in some of the difficulty we have in getting good candidates. So I just want to give everybody a heads up warning. You know, this is not going to be an easy thing that if we have to pull it off. And we got to get to the people in the legislature at least. And I'm certainly willing to give the governor a call myself. So thank you very much for this effort.
And let me make one more comment to you on the number of districts, since this came up before. I agree with Leon, and I think I stated this again, in my personal opinion, I believe we should have 10 districts, 1 mayor, no at-large. Having more districts and smaller districts would allow it to be easier for each district councilor to maintain a relationship with their constituents. It would allow for more diversity on council, because every district certainly can't be inside the belt line. And it would make it, one of the goals of that study group was to make it easier for people to run for election. A smaller district would take less money to run for an election, as opposed to an at-large district when you have to run citywide.
Tim, you make some very good points there. I think that these will stick out to people as they begin to continue thinking about this initiative. And our next speaker is Don Procopio.
Yep.
Procopio?
Yep.
I hope I said that right.
Yep, that's right, Procopio, thank you. So thanks for holding this meeting. And I also support in principle this idea of a special election or a recall of the existing city council, particularly those that went ahead and supported this closed door initiative. But I am struggling with understanding the logistics about how the special election might work, particularly if the governor vetoes the November 22 proposal, and then we're back on the October 21 schedule. Or I mean, that's what I understood from Tim's remarks early on. I'm just wondering about the logistics of this. This is a lot to pull together, having the candidates, and as Roger said, having the 25% vote. Is it realistic to think that we could do it in the time frame that we've got to work with?
Okay, so let me clarify. If the governor vetoes the bill, that would put us back to a March timeframe for the election, March 2020. We cannot have an election in October 2021. It would be illegal. Once we have the census data, and it will arrive in September, it's illegal to have an election when you know the districts need to be redrawn to rebalanced. You can't do it. But you can do it in March. So if the governor vetoes it, it'll end up having to go back to the legislature, and they would have to rip out the part that says Raleigh moves to November and let Raleigh move to March with everybody else. The logistics, as I said, the largest number of signatures we would need would be to recall the mayor, and it's under 14,000 signatures. District councilors are somewhere between it would take 2,000 signatures to recall David Cox. There was a question in chat and I answered it, and they said some people suggested we shouldn't recall David Cox. David Cox is on board with being recalled because he believes the people deserve the right to vote. He wants to be recalled. Same goes with David Knight. He may have voted against it, but he also said the people should be allowed to vote earlier. So the recall is the way to get him his wish.
Okay, so if these the existing city council gets recalled, then what happens when that, between the time they're recalled and the time that new people are elected, what happens with the governance of the city?
A recall doesn't remove anyone from office. It sets up a new election. So right. They stay in office until the new election happens. When we submit petitions, valid petitions for a recall, Board of Elections has 60 days to set up the election. During that 60-day time period, those same people are in office. The petitions for recall just force the election to be scheduled. Doesn't take anybody out of office.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the clarification.
Yep.
Thank you. Don, I hope that probably helped a lot of people that are on here trying to figure out how this thing works. And thank you, Tim, for making it so crystal clear. And right now, with everybody here, we just want to take a poll and see how people are feeling about this issue. So we're going to get a poll up just to ask you a quick question or two about how you all are feeling right now.
Do you want us to do a raised hand as our acknowledgement of this? Like, how do we answer the poll?
You click on your answer in the poll that's up on the screen.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks.
And it might help if someone actually read the question to make sure everyone understands it.
Oh yeah, the question on the poll says, do you support a special election under the recall rule? And your choices are yes, not sure, or no.
I don't see this poll, so where is it? How do we answer?
It should appear on your screen.
It's not, and I'm not the only person who is not seeing it.
I'm sorry, I'm technically an idiot on this, so I don't know how to help you.
I thought we were going to do it like a screen share or something, but I guess not.
How about just go ahead and put your
That's
name?
why I thought if we all like used our raised hand feature, then that might give you a good better idea.
I'm seeing it because 125 people have already voted.
Right. So are you on a mobile device, ma'am?
I am.
Okay, so if you go down to the bottom of your screen where you usually can see like the button that says reactions and things of that nature, you might see something that says poll.
I see chat, meeting settings, minimize, background, disconnect, auto, raise hand.
Okay.
Do you see something that says more?
Yeah, and I pressed it and it's not, that's in more.
Okay.
It says poll in progress under the recording button at the top, but it doesn't allow me to access the poll.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We've reached the level of my technical abilities. I'm sorry.
All right, but that's fine because if you could just read out the poll results, that would be super helpful.
I'll tell you what it is right now. The answer, yes, that do support the recall. 101 have voted in favor. That's 78%. 16% or 20 people have said they're not sure, and 8 people or 6% have said no. So we've gotten 130 votes.
All right. So it looks like we have people that are on board for this thing. And
Says there's 169 participants, so we got 130
Yes, so,
votes.
you know what? If you were not able to answer the poll, you can send us an email with your answer.
So Wanda, I think there's there we go. There's a couple other poll questions.
so the next poll says, select all the issues below for which you would give this council an unfavorable rating. You will have a chance to rate them favorably next. So this is multiple choice, and I guess you can choose as many as you like.
And the choices are, for those who can't see the poll,
Okay.
Affordable housing, community engagement, environment and sustainability, equity, gentrification, public safety, stormwater management, tax policy, transit and transportation, and transparency. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
That's good. It's the first one I clicked.
All right.
And just to reiterate, the next one, you will have the opportunity to rate them favorably. So this is the unfavorable rating, and then we have a favorable rating next.
And it looks like we're probably getting near the same kind of numbers we got on the last one. 126 people voted in that poll.
Yeah. So in the polling results, community engagement was the highest ranked unfavorable.
Yes, but let's be clear, they got big unfavorable numbers on all of these things.
And it's followed. Yeah, and it's followed by transparency, 79%, then affordable housing at 71%, and then gentrification at 67%. And then we have tax policy and equity at 56%, public safety at 53%, and environment and sustainability and stormwater management at 48%, and transit and transportation at 34%. So very high on unfavorability. And Lynn, you said we have one
neutral. We need a neutral rating where we don't get excited for them or against them. They're just not doing anything.
And so this is the poll where you get to rank them. And it says, select all the issues below for which you would give this council a favorable rating. And the selections are affordable housing, community engagement, environment, sustainability, equity, gentrification, public safety, stormwater management, tax policy, transit and transportation, and transparency.
I would add none of the above.
Well, then just don't vote.
Well, there's no
anything.
way to submit it.
Right, all you have, if you don't want to give them a favorable rating on anything, just don't vote in this one.
Just close the
What
window.
we'll see is we'll see fewer people actually voting in the poll.
Wanda, while everybody's finishing up, I do believe we have one last poll question after this one, and then we can resume calling on folks to speak.
Okay, thank you, Lynn.
Okay, so now you're seeing the results of the third question favorable rating.
And you shouldn't look at the percentages. You should actually look at the raw count of how many people actually said they were favorable about anything,
But not a lot of people voted in this particular poll, so.
which means they don't think of them favorable on anything.
So in this particular poll, we had 34 participants. And the highest ranking of the list that we have here was transit and transportation. And we had 17 people who voted favorable in that, and that was 50%. Followed right behind with stormwater management. And then public safety with 11 people voting for that. Then we got right here to environment and sustainability with 9 votes for that one. And then we have affordable housing and tax policy were right together with 6 people. And we also had equity and community engagement with 2 people. And we had gentrification with 1 person, and transparency was 0. So that speaks volumes.
So the takeaway with this one is that 34 people voted in this question compared to 130 people who voted in the previous question.
Exactly. I think you could subtract those 2 numbers and figure out how many zeros everyone would have voted for.
Right.
They told me there wouldn't be math.
All right, so now we have the last poll, and it says, do you feel tonight's program has been a good example of productive community engagement? And your choices are yes, not sure, or no.
Somebody's dog voted.
Just to be fair to MAB, the transparency issue started under McFarland, not Baldwin.
All right, so now we have the results. And once again, in this particular poll, we had an abundance more people who actually voted. And we had 126 people who voted. And yes, this was a good example of productive community engagement with 87%, 110 voters. 12 people were not sure, and that was 10%. And we had 4 people that feel like, no, this is not a good example of productive community engagement. And, you know, we respect everybody's opinion. Thank you. And Lynn, was that the last poll?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. So getting back to our public comment, because we really want to hear what you all are thinking about this situation. We really want to get input from the citizens and give you all the opportunity to voice how you all feel. I want to ask Wanda Gilbert Coker, do you have anybody on the phone that had a question?
Not at this moment. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So we will move right along to Stephanie Gutnick.
Hey, guys. So one, I want to say thank you so much for holding this tonight, because wow, this was really, I was like questioning, are we going to be talking about this issue? And then I got the email that, so my question is this. We have clearly enough people on this platform that are interested in doing something to make a change. The question I have is, how are you going to access all of our emails and all of that so that we can centralize ourselves and begin moving forward on getting petitions and getting volunteers coordinated so that we can make something happen? Because my big concern is not only is the transparency an issue, even the rules that govern the public meetings at the city council have been so the public does not have the opportunity to really express itself. So, you know, it doesn't seem like a recall is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a general overhaul of the entire way that this works, because there are so many people moving to Raleigh, and what's happening is you have an influx of newcomers, and the people who have been here for generations are all getting pushed out. And so the voices that you're hearing are only the voices of development and money. You're not hearing from the people who really know the city, who help build the city. So my concern is, more than just getting together, how can we create like a group that we can start to meet regularly and meet somewhere bigger and in person, where we can sort of have focus groups and we move to tables, even if we have to be masked, you know, but where we can organize ourselves and grassroots this thing to a place where we can really make a difference.
Okay, as I noted earlier, when
This Roger, I've got had my hand up twice. I just wanted to make a comment on one of the previous statements.
Okay, Roger, we have a process and it's called stack, and we let you speak
I know,
before.
but my stack doesn't work. So.
Okay,
Well,
and I have you on
question.
the list also. So I acknowledge when you raise your hand. So I have you on the list, but
Okay.
I'm keeping track of everything.
Fire away.
Thank you.
Okay, so to answer Steffi's question, as I noted earlier, we will be contacting every registrant of this event with an email, and we will allow you to, there will be an email that allows you to sign up in a volunteer way. There will be keeping track of all that. We'll get.
I wasn't able to register. I pressed on that blue button and it took me right into the Zoom format this afternoon. I tried to register by pressing that blue button, but it did not allow me to. So my big concern is nobody knows, has my email. Nobody knows, like I'm out in the boondocks somewhere.
Send us an email and we will get you the other form so that you can sign up.
If I put my email in the chat, can somebody grab it from there?
Sure, if you want everybody in here to see your email, otherwise.
Yeah, I don't care. What are they gonna do? Email me? I mean, I don't care.
Okay.
If
that's fine.
164 people want to email me, be my guest.
Okay.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you for being so eager about ready to get started. And we do, like Tim said, have a way that we're going to organize and get information out to people so that we can come together and have those conversations and get mobilized to get this thing done. Our next speaker will be David Ulmer.
Thank you. And I do appreciate you having this event and letting people who maybe aren't entirely on board join and speak at your event. First point is going to be real quick. This council did learn something from the CACs. If they move quickly, swiftly on tough decisions, they will weather the storm. Whether that is right or wrong, I will just share that is my perspective on this. That's how they got rid of the CACs. They survived it. And my thinking is they took a view of this, that they would survive it. The other point though, sort of goes to Jim Bray's point about the group. This is a very homogeneous group, and council elections in odd number years have turnout in the high teens. I will point out this council thinks they will do very well in an even year election. When more young people come out to vote, when more renters come out to vote, when a more diverse demographic comes out to vote, this council thinks in an even numbered year, they're going to do much better. They think they will do much better representing the city of Raleigh as a whole. You can disagree with it if you want, but I would ask the group be a little reflective. We've always said we want voter turnout. We want lots of participation. This council thinks when 60 to 70% of eligible voters come out to vote, they will win. That's one of the reasons they want to move to even number years, not just move their agenda forward. They don't think they will lose to this group in an even numbered year. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Looks like give us something to fight for. As you said, we have a diverse group of people here, and there may not be a lot of young people, but once we get them motivated and get them involved hey, the world is ours to conquer. You know, we have to let this city council know that the power doesn't lie with them, but it lies with the people. And that's what our intent is. And our next,
Wanda, if I can, I would also add, we are talking about an even numbered year election, just not November of 2022. What we're proposing would happen in 2022, just not November.
Just note that this would move all elections forward to even number years, 2022, 2024, 2026. That's what that would do for the city of Raleigh.
okay. And our next speaker is Sade Gilbert.
Thank you, Wanda. First of all, I just want to thank you guys for throwing this event. I think this is awesome and a perfect platform for whether you agree or disagree with the council. It's a good place to be able to share your opinion. I think my biggest takeaway, even starting the MAB Got to Go campaign, one of the biggest things when I was out in the street, this is in COVID, trying to get signatures for the petition, a lot of people are like, well, what happens, you know, if we do it? Well, who's going to run? And I believe that those are great questions to ask. But I think a bigger question to address is what happens if we do nothing, right? If we just let the council, we let the mayor, we let these people just do whatever they want in the city of Raleigh, what then becomes the opportunity cost if we don't fight back? And so I think that's important to kind of let that resonate. That yes, this is a massive undertaking. It's going to take a reach one, teach one personality type thing. You got to tell your neighbor, that neighbor needs to tell 3 people, you know, so on and so forth. But every movement starts with this ideology of if you tell someone else, more people will join the movement. So yes, it's a daunting task. 14,000 people, 14,000 signatures, that's a lot. But it's important to keep in mind what happens if we don't do anything.
Thank you, Sade. And our next speaker is Marla Blagden.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, I'm relatively new to Raleigh from another state, and I didn't vote on a few of those because I really don't know about the city council and their past and what's been going on and the issues. What's a good way for me to get up to speed? What documents should I go towards? How can I find out a bit of the history of the city council and what they've been doing?
Well, I mean, there are several different options. There is a YouTube page that has all the city council meetings that are archived there. And they also have them archived on the RTN network.
Okay.
Yeah, they move so fast. It's a lot. It's a lot to intake. So
there are a lot of blogs at www.livableraleigh.com that has information from our point of view on some of their activities. So you might want to check that out.
Okay. What was the blog again?
It's livableraleigh.com. It's our website.
Oh yeah, I've been on that. Yeah, I've been.
Well, there are over 200 blogs there. They're categorized. You can do searches and you know, or you can go all the way back to the beginning and start reading from them.
Okay, thank you.
yeah, and there are also some tremendous recommendations in the stack also. I mean, in the comments, in the chat that people have been offering to you. So if you want to take a look at the chat, you can see some more recommendations that they have made.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And next we have Roger.
Unmuted here. Just real quick, because I'm always for quick meetings. Just 2 things. One of them is that I was appalled when the city council voted on have a 2-minute discussion or for each person. That is fundamentally, you know, the city council, the way we run it is just basically the input from the constituents. Okay, so that I think that's a huge First Amendment violation that nobody's ever called them on, mainly because nobody wants to pay the money for a lawyer. But that's another problem. And I always think that you know, somebody said, and I don't know if we can emphasize this, that we really need to fix the way the whole thing is managed, because there are things that come in there just out of the blue, okay? And we just don't know, don't know about it in advance. And if some of these things are controversial, somebody says, now, wait a minute, and I've been going to these meetings now for a long, long time. It didn't used to be this way, guys. They used to actually listen to us when we come up and ask them some questions that were uncomfortable, particularly when we had, some of the older folks on it. Thanks again.
Thank you, Roger. We appreciate that.
Wanda, let me make a couple of comments based on what I've seen, what I just saw in the chat. First, someone's talking about the different terms and when elections will happen. A recall just has a special election to finish off the current term of city councilors. So their current terms, with what they've asked the state to do, will be extended to November 2022. The winners of recalls would then be in office until November of 2022, and then that would be the next regular election. Okay. And the other issue is about odd years versus even years. Yes, on an even year, you will get more participants, but you will also have much less focus on local elections. They will be the media and the people in general will be much more focused about presidential elections, governor elections, senator elections, US Congress elections. By the time they get down to the ballot, they won't have any idea who's running for city council or why. That's why they originally put them in odd years, was so that they would be by themselves, the sole focus on the municipal election.
Exactly.
Thank you, Tim.
And
our
nonpartisan.
Our next speaker is Kristen Hill.
Hi, my name's Kristen, obviously. So I've never gone through a recall election because it's just never happened here. If we were to have a recall election, what would be the time frame that we would have to collect the signatures? And if we were to get enough signatures, like when would that election be? Would there even be enough time for people to fundraise is, the main part of it. And then secondly, Tim, you were mentioning earlier that it would be great if we had more people on the city council, and I 100% agree. But is that even realistic? And is that something that the council has to vote for? Or is that another thing that the legislature would have to vote for?
Okay, so that one, the number of districts is totally up to the council. They don't need the state to do that. They can, there's nothing, they can change that if they wanted to and did it soon enough for the November 2022 election. I don't know if they're going to try to do that or not. As far as timing, we have as much time as it takes to collect these signatures. The time period of when the election happens depends on when we get the valid petitions turned into the city. And as I said, as I noted, once the petitions are validated by the city clerk, they turn it into the Board of Elections, and the Board of Elections has to run the election within 60 days. So depending on how long it takes us to gather the signatures, that's what will determine when the election would happen.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you, Tim, for your answer to her question so precisely. Our next speaker is Deidre McCullers.
Hey, y'all, I want to go back to something that one of the other participants spoke on about meeting somewhere and how people who've been in Raleigh for generations aren't really invited to the table or what have you. And I don't know how that's going to happen. Not only are we one of the people, Black people who's been for generations, not only are we not invited to the table, but then when we are, we're expected to speak a certain way, we're expected to look a certain way, we're expected to dress a certain way, and we don't speak the Queen's language, neither are we interested in doing so. I just want to state that for the record. So whenever y'all do come up with these conversations and y'all want to meet in places and blah, 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 also consider that the people that y'all are also talking about don't have money to meet in these places. So if y'all don't have a budget to where folk can freely come in and dine with y'all, whether y'all drinking coffee, beer, wine, cocktails, or whatever, understand that the people who are being pushed out of this city are the descendants of the people who built this nation, the descendants of the people who built those tunnels that our lawmakers had to escape through on January 6th. Keep that in mind, that the people who have been pushed out of this city are the descendants of slaves, not the descendants of slave owners.
Thank you, Deidre. Our next speaker will be Paul Brandt.
Yes, thank you. This is perhaps a little off subject, but I want everybody to think about the way that City Council has been operating in this non-transparent mode. And recently, a text change basically is going to affect every property within City of Raleigh and the ETJ that is currently zoned R2, R4, or R6. And they allowed council to vote with very little input from the public. In fact, I was in attendance at a planning commission meeting, and the people that were allowed to vote or allowed to speak for any length of time were the developers, builders, and people who formerly were in the real estate business or were real estaters. So there is no attempt at all by City Council to hear the private citizens' input. And what's going to happen is that duplexes, townhomes, and in some cases small apartment buildings are going to be built in R2, R4, and R6 neighborhoods, wherever there's a lot that a developer can tear down and put this type of housing next door to existing single-family dwellings. I don't know how many people on this call even know about this, but I'm terribly concerned that this is another developer-driven grab to take property from individuals and develop it to make money. And the affordable housing that was the primary reason for doing this initiative was obvious that the city has no control over private property. Developers can do whatever they want, they can promise whatever they want, but they don't have to deliver whatever and they can deliver what they want at any price. It's going to be market driven. So I'm really concerned that here we have a group now, we're talking about recalling. I'm absolutely for this, but I'm just saying, you know, we have many, many, many examples of the city taking advantage of citizens who are unaware of what's really going on around here.
Sure. Let me make a quick response. Livable Raleigh is not opposed to density. Livable Raleigh appreciates density where the city has defined it in their comprehensive plan as being appropriate, which is in the downtown urban core, on transit corridors, and in city-defined growth centers. Density everywhere for the sake of density does nothing to help reduce traffic, reduce car use, or help the environment. Adding density where the city has defined density belongs is a good thing. Adding density randomly everywhere any developer asks for it is not a good thing. Thank you.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that position.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Tim. Wanda Gilbert Coker, do we have anybody that has called in on the phone that would like to make comment or have a question?
Not yet, but I would like to make a comment myself about density. Density is not an excuse to gentrify the Black community. There are many areas in Raleigh that does not have any housing whatsoever. So land is, you know, there's open space. You do not have to tear down, displace us, run us out of our own communities to say, oh, I'm creating density. And nor do you have to, you know, they look at our community and say it's old. And since it's old, they want to tear it down and put brand new, but we can't afford it. But can you imagine in Charleston, South Carolina, and some of these older cities, even if you go over to Europe, or these older countries, if they were to tear down everything they consider old and replace it with new, we would have no culture and no history. And I know that's what, I mean, Nicole agrees with that and think that's fine, Nicole Stewart. But tearing down is not, and displacing people is not affordable housing. It's not the way, oh, the excuse to bring in affordable housing. That's called gentrification. So that's another reason I'm here for this recall.
And I want to wholeheartedly agree with everything Wanda just said. In the past, the African American community was forced to move to Southeast Raleigh because it was an undesirable location back in the day. And now that the younger people now decide they want to live downtown and be close to downtown, and the reason they were forced, the reason the African American community was forced into Southeast Raleigh was because the white community didn't want them in the suburbs that they were building outside the city. Now that they all decide the urban lifestyle is what they want again, now they want to push the African American community out of their long-term homes and shove them out to Garner and Knightdale and everywhere else where they can afford something. It's ridiculous.
Okay, thank you so much, Tim. And there's so much truth, and there's a lot of history that goes into that story too, because the Blacks that were in the outskirts were sharecroppers and they owned their lands. And then there were opportunities for these to buy these homes in these undesirable locations, which were like Southeast Raleigh, and some of them were in floodplains like Rochester Heights and some of those areas. And there's so much history in the story of the movement of Black folk from the sharecropper land that they actually owned into the inner city, where there were flooded plains and the city did not help them when their areas were flooded. And our next speaker will be Fran Lynch.
One of the things that our discussion has pointed out to me is how casually we've taken democracy for far too long. You know, democracy is going to exist, is going to be sustainable when we have a fully engaged citizenry who also is informed. And I think this kind of meeting and this kind of session is really helpful. I also think some of us seniors who remember back in school taking civics and understanding how our government works and what makes it work have an obligation to educate those around us who may not be so well informed. Local government is the beginning foundation of our democracy. We must be engaged. We must be aware of what's going on, which is why closed doors are out of the question, which is why secret meetings happening at a state level as well as at a local council level just should be verboten. And I'm really disappointed in the fact that media has not stepped up to say, this is what's being proposed and this is the impact it's going to have on you in your daily life. Because that's what happens on local policy making. It has a direct impact on the lives of citizens within that city, county, state. So if you have an opportunity to educate a neighbor or a friend, you need to do that and then bring them into the fold here. And I'm ready to get petitions signed. I will say this for Wake County, I've been working in the voting area with the county for a long time, and they could put together what is needed to run the elections in March with no difficulty.
All right. Thank you so much, Fran. And we appreciate your comments. And that's what this space is all about, is actually showing City Council what community engagement is really all about. You know, community is not a monolith, you know? So when you're talking about community engagement, it means bringing about a diversity of people to talk about the issues in their community. And we are community. We live here in the city of Raleigh. We hold the power for who represents us. We are their constituents. It's their responsibility to know what we want to see in our city. At the end of the day, we are the taxpayers that pay the taxes for this city. So it is their responsibility to know and have a relationship with us as constituents and represent us in that manner. And so moving right along to our next speaker, which will be Erica Moss.
Greetings, everyone. I wanted to make a point on the importance of voting. I am a community organizer with Power the Vote, North Carolina, and we have been working on trying to get people, eligible voters, re-registered who have been purged from the voting rolls. The Board of Elections has been doing a purge, and over 400,000 eligible voters have been removed from the voting lists. And so with that, I do have a link that I can put in the chat. You are able to click on it. And you are able to check on your voter registration status. I was unfortunately one of the individuals that was purged from those from the lists. I just happened to check on myself one day, and I was not an I was no longer a voter here in this state, so I had to re-register myself. But thank you so much for listening, and I will promptly put the link in the chat.
Thank you, Erica. And yeah, we have to pay attention. There have been so many voter suppression tactics that have been in play since the change of the administration, because we saw in our state here in North Carolina a tremendous turnout to vote. We had numbers that we had never seen in the state before. And so, of course, there's somebody who does not like it when certain groups come out to vote. And one of their tactics is purging the rolls. And that makes us have to be back on our job again to re-register them, get them ready, and get them able to exercise the power that they have as a voter. So our next speaker will be Will Marks.
Oh, I don't have anything to say. Thank you.
Okay, had Will on the list. So the next person I have on the list is Sean Davis. Is Sean still with us? Okay. All right, maybe Sean is not with us anymore. And then I have Stephen Mayberry.
Thank you. Thanks for holding the forum. And I think we should move forward from what I'm hearing everyone say in community. How we do that and initiate it and get it into motion. I'm not sure who in the group would take that leadership out would happen. I'm wondering where the media is in all of this. I don't watch that much local news, but if we did initiate the effort, the chances of the media picking up on it, getting a much broader information base for those who know more about how that works. It sounds like we've got a bad batch of council people that need to be sent on their way. I'm not sure as well how in this short of a length of time we can get people of quality to sign up for filling those seats. So I'm open to answers on those questions.
What I can tell you is the media is paying attention to this meeting tonight. The News and Observer ran a story about this meeting this afternoon. I think members of the media signed up, registered for this event. I don't know. I haven't been running through all the names and wouldn't recognize them anyway. So I don't know if any of them have actually signed in and attended. And I believe we will be doing some media contacts after the event tonight. We have some interviews. So they are paying attention. I know.
Tim, Rick Gall, Gall, is director at WRAL. He's probably the most important one in the media.
If you call the newsroom at any of the stations after we're done here, if someone who is the main, people who put it together, and give them a recap, they will cover it.
Yeah, we have several people in the media here actually with us. So they are very tuned in, especially local news is very tuned in to what's going on. And I'm pretty sure there will be much more chatter afterwards. And so our next speaker will be Mr. Bill Paget.
Thank you, and it's good to see everyone. This is an incredibly complicated issue, but just want to drift back a little bit. Raleigh's been at the top of the best city to raise a family and to get a job and to grow up for 20 years or so. And as chair of the Wade CAC for probably about that many, way too many, but no one else wanted to do it. That was a process that everybody as neighborhoods came together. And as I looked at CACs, one of the key things that we did, whether it was for a bond or for parks or for traffic in the street, we would have every month someone from the police department, the Parks and Recs department, someone from the city to come in and explain the zoning that was getting ready to occur in one of our 18 districts. And it was a lot of work, but a lot of information. And when critical issues that really impacted a lot of neighbors came up, obviously there was controversy, and usually that was over like huge rezonings where the quality of living, at least for some folks that live close by, might be impacted. Yes, they were controversial, but generally we found ways to work with the developers and came to an agreement in the end with our council listening carefully to both sides. And we were able to get the kind of development, I think, that allowed Raleigh to stay number one as it was. When we did the UDO, we only took the commercial properties because that was the easiest to tackle. We didn't go into residential at that time because we knew that initiative, and we knew the responses from people that lived here, paid taxes, and were highly involved were going to be very, very much into what they wanted to see their city become. This council is basically taken with tech changes and with policy rules and processes, and with the elimination of the CACs and the educational arm the city had, and basically, and within a few months, with very little experience, unfortunately, they have basically rewritten the zoning rules for residential properties around the area. And I think more is to come, and that's disturbing. It's hard enough when you have incredible communication lines, and that's what the CACs did. So when you hear folks, each CAC chair, and there were 18, were elected by their local citizens. And so when you hear someone say the CACs were dysfunctional and couldn't do it, we had no resources. The things that we did pretty much were out of our own pocket, our time, but we cared. And no, we could not reach everybody. This group tonight won't be able to reach everybody. You never can reach everyone. But we made the effort, sent out emails to everybody that couldn't attend. And for the last few years, when I wasn't a chair, we did streaming. So those people that couldn't actually come to the meetings could actually hear the meetings going on. They were a remarkable organization.
Hey, Bill, I'm sorry. Do you have anything? I got to make you wrap up.
Okay. It's just that as you look at these and the complication of issues, the only way we're going to get back a process from which we are able to engage our neighbors and learn from our neighbors is to do something to take this in hand. Otherwise, I'm afraid we're going to go down a route where our input's irrelevant. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. I think you're truly onto something. It was disheartening to me to when the CACs were dismantled also, because I felt like there should have been a both and approach. that the CACs could have stayed intact. And then it also should have been researched ways how they could have been bettered. So you just don't take away something if you don't have a plan to replace it. So I think that it should have been a both and approach with them in place. And what are some avenues or what are some resources that we can utilize to improve the citizen engagement with other citizens that may not come to the CAC meetings all the time. So I always thought that that would have been a better approach by doing a both and synopsis of that. Our next speaker is Carolyn Guckett. I just saw her.
There we go. So sorry. I have a question. Maybe Tim can answer it or whoever. If we get a special election, obviously, as Tim said earlier, then we'll have a runoff. But what about the plurality thing after that? Is this a done deal?
Yes, for the 2022 election, it will be a nonpartisan plurality election. Didn't have to be that way, but that's what the city asked for. Plurality means you don't have to win 50% of the vote. You could win with as much, as little as 20% of the vote, depending on how many candidates are there. If they want to run a nonpartisan election in an even year, the reason it has to be plurality, if you run an election in North Carolina in November, it's not illegal to have a runoff. It's just not possible with the election scheduling. So you can't. If you're going to have your election in November, it has to be plurality because there's no time in the way these elections are scheduled in the state to run a runoff afterwards. The solution to that problem is to run a nonpartisan primary form of election. You have a primary in March, just like the rest of the primaries, that winnows the field down to 2 candidates. Those 2 candidates have the election in November, and then you don't have to worry about a runoff because there's only 2 candidates.
Thank you, Tim. And our next speaker is Donna Bailey.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can I just, it went back to where I was muted. I just have a follow-up real quick. There's no way we can do anything like ranked choice voting because the legislature controls that, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, the legislature controls that. And I put a link to a Livable Raleigh blog in the chat earlier about, remember when someone mentioned there's a study group meeting to talk about the election and the council and the way they elect and the numbers? There is a blog on Livable Raleigh's website that discusses everything that the city can do on their own without the legislature and what that study group is talking about and recommending. I put that link in the chat. So if you're interested in learning more about that study group and what the city can and can't do on their own, it's in there.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment. It is not just the election issue that this council has done behind closed doors. I mean, they started off right away with eliminating the CACs, but recently they also adopted this new TIG, tax incentive grant, with no community engagement whatsoever. And this is taking our tax dollars and giving up to $5 million a year to developers for up to 15 years. So $75 million. And the way they structured the requirements, it is very, very loose. It doesn't even require community benefits. It's basically just to assist developers. And a TIG could work if it was worded correctly. But again, this is just the pattern of how this council has done things, if not totally behind closed doors, with very, very little exposure and input.
Thank you, Donna. That is also one of the things that they have done is the tax increment grant. And I hope you all have visited or were participants in our TIG-1 and TIG-2 forums. If not, I'm pretty sure you can find those on the Livable Raleigh page. But one thing about it is it's a tax break for wealthy developers at the expense of taxpayers. So the city says that it doesn't cost the city anything but it definitely costs the taxpayers. So those are things that you have to think about when you're thinking about these recall and all of these different things that this council has done. And how much more can we stand without standing up to them and telling them, this is not what we want. And if you're not here to represent us, then we don't want you at all. And so I think that's the stance that we have to take. And our next speaker is Anne Franklin.
There, you can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, it's wonderful to be with each of you tonight. How Raleigh's elections are structured is an old story. And, you know, there was a time when the rule was 5 men within 5 minutes of 5 points. And that's who was on the council. So in 73, I guess it was, we turned that around when we elected Mayor Leitner and had the districts. And that was called a weighted majority, so that everybody votes for at least half the council. Now, I'm hearing you all raise the fact today that so many people who were elected are from a particular part of the city. I think that could be addressed. But I've always liked that idea that I could elect actually half of the council. So that's here or there. I'm hesitant about this process because I think we've got to do a whole lot more on process. I'm not happy for us just to be against what they've come up with. And there's plenty of lists. The list is long, and I saw it in the survey, but I'm ready for a new agenda for Raleigh. I'm ready for us to say what we're for. And even if we have to skinny that down to 3 or 4 things, 3 to 5 things. Most people can't remember 8 things, to be honest. So let's do what we can to talk to each other, meet, do it every way we can think of to hone our thinking about what we want. And then candidates can decide whether they are in tune with that or not. I don't mean lockstep. I just mean, can they contribute to it? And that should be the base for Livable Raleigh, or any of us who care a lot about local government, to be able to say what we're for, and that we support a process where we believe that the strength of the community is the people in the community. Not the, you know, everybody's got a special interest, but the together part of this and calling on people's talents and people's expectations and people's ability to work as citizens has been so badly neglected that we haven't really reshaped it. So I'm ready for reshaping, and a be there or be square kind of wing, but I do think it takes work on our part. It's not the same as getting names on a petition. It's a lot of work, putting ideas out there, you know, narrowing down, getting clear, giving good examples, recruiting people that understand. So I love this work, and I love each person on this call. And I think there are a lot of people who care about this who are not on this call. I'll do what I can to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ann. I think that you said some very valuable things there. It's about what do we want? And I think that in some instances we have told council what we want. And I know for one example was downtown South, our planning commission unanimously voted against the rezoning.
That's right.
And our council vehemently gave disregard to their vote and voted for it. So I agree. We have to sit down and plan out what do we actually want for our city. And I think that's a great idea. Thank you for that information. And our next speaker is Wanda Gilbert Coker.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak a little to what Ms. Franklin was saying, which is all great, but until we start holding people like Nicole Stewart and such available for the votes that they've already passed, that is harming the community, we can come up with all these ideals and thoughts and what we want for the city, but where do we go with that? The CACs are gone. So where do we go? When we go to a public hearing, we got 1 minute. You don't have time to get that out. So where has the city created an opportunity for us to go and speak on these things? We no longer have that. That's part of the reason we're doing this. But I feel like in the same breath, we need to also be holding them accountable for their past votes, which has made the city what it is now. Gentrification here in the city of Raleigh is at a rate of going at the rate of large cities like New York City and Atlanta. There was an article, as you many know, that was already published on this. At what point do we hold them accountable? And I feel like if the governor does not sign this veto, that then yes, this is the point we show them that we're holding them accountable at every step, and we see what they're doing, and we want them gone, and we need new people. So we have to, as someone said before, we have to take actions like this when we're being pushed against the wall, when we're being pushed out of our communities. We have to stand up and say no more. And that's what I see this recall as.
Thank you, Wanda. And our next speaker will be Alan Falk.
You need to unmute Alan.
Sorry about that. Usually I'm pretty good about that. I'd like to put out 2 pieces of information that I'd like everyone to think about, just in terms of the kind of problems we're talking about and possible solutions. The first is a quotation that I have on my personal website. And it says, "The art of economics consists in looking not merely at the immediate, but at the longer effects of any act or policy. It consists in tracing the consequences of that policy, not merely for one group, but for all groups." Okay, that's point number 1. I think a lot of things that have been discussed tonight are focused on like one group you want to help, but you need to discuss how that policy will affect everyone else who's not in that group. And the second thing is something which I really like to create as an addendum to every bill that's introduced in any legislature anywhere in the country. Call it Allen's Law or Allen's Amendment. And the amendment goes something like this. Okay, state what the program or bill or whatever is seeking to accomplish. Okay, here's the goal. Okay, great. How will you measure that you've achieved that goal? What are the measurements associated with that goal? What milestones will you establish, concrete milestones, to know that you are approaching that goal? What measurements will you take to say, okay, we're halfway there, we're 3/4 of the way there, or we're not getting there at all? If we're not getting there at all, the amendment should include a sunset clause that say, well, we tried that, didn't work, so this bill goes away. And those kind of things, I think, should be added to any proposal that anyone here is considering, including for the city council or whatever else. You want to propose something, you got to measure what you want to achieve, and you want to measure progress toward it in tangible ways. It's like, yeah, let's get rid of gentrification. Well, what will that look like? Who will it affect? And how will it affect everyone else? And how will you know you're getting there? And I don't hear that. So I want to add that as a thought process, as a think point for everyone to consider. Okay. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. All right, so we have narrowed down our stack, and everybody that was on stack has now spoken. And this is the last call. If you have a dying last comment that you would like to get out to the public here that we have, the audience that we have here, now is your time to put stack, S-T-A-C-K, in the chat, and we will allow you your time to speak. So it's the last call, not the last call for alcohol, but the last call for our community engagement comments here.
Larry Helfont has stack in there.
Yep, I see Mr. Larry, and that's who it'll be. All right, Mr. Larry.
All right, good evening all. I've listened all evening and I think all the points that were raised were great points. But the bottom line is real easy. The council is voted in to work for the residents. They don't listen to the residents. Every step they take is for themselves. They don't listen to their own staff. They overrule the planning commission and they just decide what they want to do and how they want to spend money. Something has got to change. Even if we fail in a recall, you've got to send notice to council that they represent us and they're not doing their job. And that's it.
Thank you, Larry. I'm glad that you got on stack. I'm feeling that. That's powerful right here towards the end. All right, and the next person that we have is Miss Carmen Coffin.
Hi, all. I hope everybody's doing well tonight. Sorry to get in so late. And I've been listening. There's a quote that I want to share with you. It is a single issue quote, but this is from 1988 from former late Mayor Clarence Leitner. He said, Raleigh is beginning to address the housing situation because homelessness is going to be an epidemic because the government has stopped helping. I found this quote a couple of days ago and it has really stuck with me because, you know, if you can't afford somewhere to live, that affects everything else. It affects your community engagement, your ability to have time or energy to speak your mind because you're just trying to make sure you've got a roof over your head, or you're just trying to make sure you've got food for your family, or you're trying to make sure that you have the ability to purchase the medicine that you need to keep going. So I don't see these things being taken seriously by our city council. And maybe it's because they're not affected. So maybe they need to go and sit with somebody who's homeless. Maybe they need to have, you know, sometimes you don't get it until you've got it. And so maybe we can organize not just a recall petition, but a trip. I can't remember what you call it when you take the kids, field trip. So, you know, just building a homeless shelter does not take care of all of the people that we have in the city of Raleigh living in hotels, living, you know, I can't find a street to go to today that is a major artery that doesn't have somebody standing there with a sign, and I don't have enough money to give all of them. And I think they need a field trip. And that sounds simplistic, but I don't think that they understand the reality. And I don't, Deirdre's saying you can't train the heart. You might not be able to train it, but you might be able to poke some holes in it. And so I just think we have to find not only a way to convince them at the ballot box, but we have to find some ways to humanize the situation for them, because I don't think they get it. And data helps with that. But if the data never comes to you, or if the data only comes to you through staff, maybe the data needs to come through the citizens. Maybe we need to bombard their mailboxes with statistics, with stories, with, you know, just a constant hit.
Carmen, these are great. You're almost at 4 minutes. Can you
I'm
wrap up,
sorry.
please? That's
I'm
okay.
done. that's all I had. I started one place and my head went somewhere else. Those of you who know me know that I do that. So I'm
Thank
done.
you. Thank you, Carmen.
And I have a quick response for Carmen. This council does get it. If you think back to their first retreat when they were first elected, they took a field trip. You know where they went? John Kane took them on a field trip to downtown South and explained to them all the benefits of downtown South. And it was like, yes, let's have a taxpayer funded infomercial for John Kane in downtown South. They took the field trip they wanted to take.
Thank you, Tim, for pointing that out. And I think Ms. Carmen is right. You know, some of these issues have to be humanized. I would like to challenge council to go to and spend the night at a homeless shelter, to understand that you have to be in at 6 p.m. and then you have to be up at 6 a.m. and you're out in the elements or wherever doing whatever from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. if you don't have a job, or trying to figure out what you're going to eat and how you're going to make it throughout the day. I would challenge them to go through that experience, to know what it feels like to go several places trying to find jobs and the doors are just shutting your face. You know, I would challenge them to actually live a little and actually humanize some experiences, because I think a lot of them live a different type of life where they don't have compassion and are not as kind as Marianne Baldwin always tells us to be kind, and she's not nearly kind in any of the meetings. We didn't bring a gavel tonight because we really wanted to see what the community had on their hearts to say. And that's what humanizing a community engagement is all about. Do you really want to listen to the people, or you really want to bang the gavel at them? And so our last speaker for tonight will be Joshua Bradley, and then we will wrap up with our call to action. So don't leave us just yet, because we're going to make this thing happen, y'all.
Thanks, Wanda. Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Ms. Cawthon said. Since 2010, the rate of unhoused people in the city has almost tripled. It's a direct effect of gentrification. It is, there are people that are, even if you count don't count the people that are able to stay in hotels and stuff, there's still, the unhoused population still exceeds the amount of shelter space that we have in the city, which is tragic. And I think that the current city needs to look at it, have been ignoring that issue, and not just this council, it's been ignored for years at the behest of the developers. I think you should look for where people get their campaign contributions. And if you see John Kane there, you know how they're going to vote. So it's just something to keep in mind, you know, going forward, that we as a community include everybody, regardless of, you know, ethnicity, religion, and socioeconomic level. It's important that we, when we consider what we got to do, how it not only affects us, but affects the people that have the less ability to do what some of us can do. And I just think it's really important to focus, and when we make any considerations as citizens of Raleigh and what we're doing, that we should consider the people that don't have the voice that we do. That's all. Over.
Thank you, Josh. And I think we will get ready to wrap up and get ready to close out. I think one thing, I think I have a lot of deep thoughts about meeting the needs. And it just amazes me that in any other situation, for example, I think about the bank bailout. You know, we met the needs of the banks as taxpayers and we bailed them out. And when we look at our city, as far as the need for housing, and the city has done this research themselves to show that we don't have housing for people that are like 30% of the AMI, and how we cannot put restrictions on developers to say, hey, we need you to meet the need in our city, not just what you want to build, but what we need in our city. If there's a need for something, why do we always as taxpayers have to meet the need of like the bank bailout? We met the need of bailing the banks out, but why is anybody not coming back to meet the needs of the taxpayers and the citizens? And that's what I would just like to end on. I think about that a lot. It's like we meet the needs of rich people, but the poor people are always left out, and we never meet the needs of the poor people. And that's all I'll have to say for tonight, and I'll pass it on to our closer for tonight.
That's it?
Yeah, hang on. Somebody will be coming on. She might need to unmute herself.
Sorry, here I am. I am not used to being muted, let's face it. I'm sorry about that. I really want to thank our wonderful participants tonight. This has been quite an extraordinary experience. We started tonight not knowing what we would hear and who we would hear from, and whether we would be in a productive frame of mind throughout. And it has been simply extraordinary. It does indicate that this city has a lot of wonderful, active citizens who care about the city, who care about each other. And I hope that you will continue to connect with us over the next several months. For those of you who don't know much about Livable Raleigh, we do have an active social media presence. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we have a YouTube channel. We have a Gmail email address. It's livableraleigh@gmail.com. If you couldn't vote in the poll, or you have something to tell us, or you have a question you forgot to ask, please, by all means, just send us an email. We have a wonderful website. Some of the subjects that we've touched on tonight, you will find some nice historic archives from the past 19 months of blog writing, and they're easy to access, and would encourage you to do that.
Susan,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want people to know we've got our Instagram up and running now too, as well.
Okay, great. Woo, that's new news. We've been anxious to get Instagram up and running, and that will open up the door to, I think, our younger voters who like to communicate a lot on Instagram. So that's been one of our goals. Thank you, Lynn, for helping us achieve that. We also have a mailbox, a good old US mailbox. It's Post Office Box 6404 in Raleigh, and our zip is 27628. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so you've heard mention of some follow-up actions that we'd like to ask you all to help us with. First of all, we have a limited amount of time, but we want to encourage all of you to send Governor Cooper a message to veto the November 2022 election bill. There is an Action Network letter that has been set up. The link is here on the screen, and we've just put it in chat. Do not fear if you cannot get it off of either one of those. Tomorrow we will be sending all registrants a letter with this link in there. And this letter is already written, so it's a very easy automatic send. Excuse me. The second thing we want to ask you to take action on is to volunteer to help us should we go forward with a petition recall. We'll need help. And I think if anything is daunting us, it is the fact that this is a big undertaking, and we're going to need a lot of people. Probably every single person that's on the event tonight, but then your neighbors and friends and organizations that you know. This is one of those things that will require a lot of effort on the ground. There are a few ways you can volunteer. Again, we have a form set up on Action Network, or you can email us at livableraleigh@gmail.com, or you can call us at 919-807-1684, which is our new telephone number. Okay, so we really have had a wonderful evening. I hope you have felt the same way. And what I wanted to say is that Livable Raleigh is about informing and engaging our public in the issues that matter and affect your quality of life. please stay connected with us so that we can all work together to keep Raleigh as wonderful a city as it is and to bring responsible leadership into office. Thank you and good night.